It was meant to be a relaxing river cruise, until around 600 people vanished in sewage beneath the Thames. This is the forgotten horror of the Princess Alice disaster. The River Thames, in the late 19th century, was both a lifeline and a liability. Victorian London in 1878 was a city of over 3 million souls, crowded, booming, and toxic. The air choked with soot, and the river flowed thick with human and industrial waste, yet, for the working classes, the Thames also offered affordable recreation. The Princess Alice, originally launched as the Butte in 1865, had become a familiar pleasure steamer. For a few shillings, Londoners could board her from Swan Pier or London Bridge and escape the city's filth. On Tuesday, September 3rd, 1878, the weather was fine, spirits were high. Passengers included families, lovers, children, and groups from factories and parishes. The day passed in laughter and music, but as the sun set, their return journey would take them into the most contaminated stretch of the Thames. Right as another ship appeared from the shadows, as the Princess Alice steamed upstream toward North Woolwich, she followed the usual course along the southern bank. Meanwhile, the Bywell Castle, a 900-ton collier returning from dry dock in Newcastle, was headed downriver. Guided by an experienced captain, Christopher Dix, navigational rules on the Thames required ships to pass port to port, but in practice many captains used their discretion. In the darkness, the Princess Alice turned to cross the channel. Far too late, she cut across the path of the Bywell Castle. An inquest later heard testimony from boatsmen who described the scene as one of instant devastation. The steamer was struck with such force that she broke in two. It all happened in moments. Survivor George Linecar recounted, "One moment we were singing, the next, screams. All of us dropped like skittles. People were thrown into the air. Then the water swallowed us. She sank in just a couple of minutes. Dozens were trapped below deck. Others were crushed by falling machinery. The calm water turned into chaos as hundreds splashed, screamed, and vanished. For those who survived the impact, the water itself was just as deadly. The location of the collision, Galleon's Reach, was where London's raw sewage was discharged daily. Beckton and Crossness pumping stations, overwhelmed by the demands of modern London, had just flushed 75 million gallons of untreated effluent into the Thames that day. The Victorian chemist Dr. Alfred Carpenter wrote, "A brownish-gray opaque fluid. It hissed, it bubbled. The odor was like death, a charnel house on the move. The water was a toxic brew of feces, industrial sludge, arsenic, sulfur, and even lime waste from gasworks." Survivors later told of vomiting mid-swim, feeling their lungs burn, their eyes sear shut. Victorian clothing made things worse. Full skirts, petticoats, boots, all became anchors. Children vanished beneath the surface in seconds. Only around 130 of the 800 aboard survived. In the aftermath, recovery efforts were grim and disorganized. The crew of the Bywell Castle did throw ropes and launch boats, but with little effect. The tide was swift, the light failing, and the river unforgiving. Bodies surfaced for days. Bargemen and watermen were paid by the corpse, a shilling per body return. This gruesome task turned into a macabre trade. Temporary mortuaries were set up at Woolwich. Women searched bodies for wedding rings. A mass grave was dug at Woolwich Cemetery. Newspapers described a carpet of corpses drifting downriver. Many of the dead were never identified. Hundreds of families went home with no closure. Only the silence of loss. Public outrage was swift. Queen Victoria sent condolences. Editorials demanded accountability. The Board of Trade held an inquiry in October 1878. It lasted several weeks and featured heated debate. Both captains were blamed. Grinstead of the Princess Alice for crossing the river too late, and the Bywell Castle's captain for not slowing or reversing sooner. The rules of the river were criticized as vague and inconsistently enforced. One witness testified, "It was a matter of minutes, seconds, but there was confusion, and confusion on the Thames is fatal." The tragedy revealed just how dangerous Britain's most famous river had become, not just through navigation, but through policy failure. The disaster forced change. Maritime reforms, mandatory port-to-port navigation, standardized signal lighting for steamers, river police patrols increased, passenger capacity rules tightened, sanitation and environmental action. The pollution that killed so many could no longer be ignored. Sewage was redirected and treated, first mechanically, then chemically. The concept of sludge boats emerged, designed to carry waste far out to sea. Dumping raw sewage into the Thames was finally banned 120 years later in 1998. The Princess Alice tragedy was a tipping point. Reformers like Sir Joseph Bazalgette, already leading London's sewer redesign after the Great Stink of 1858, gained new urgency and funding. A memorial was erected in 1880 at Woolwich Cemetery, a Celtic cross for the nameless dead. In 2008, a National Trust plaque marked the disaster. This was not a noble disaster. No royalty, no aristocrats died. It was an event of the poor, the forgotten, and perhaps that's why it faded from national memory. Captain Grinstead went down with his vessel, and his family faced public shame. Many of the victims were women and children. Eyewitnesses recalled mothers clutching infants, couples trapped beneath fallen beams, working men calling for help as they were dragged out. Scores who survived the night died later from cholera, typhoid, and sepsis from the rotting water. In all, between 600 and 700 lives were lost, making it the worst inland water disaster in British history. And yet, the official response, though productive, never truly addressed the social inequality at the heart of it. These people died because they had no choice but to swim in a poisoned river, ride an overloaded steamer, and trust a system that didn't value them. Today, people stroll the Thames path unaware of the tragedy beneath their feet. The next time we speak of progress, let it be tempered by memory. Because history doesn't just repeat when we forget. It repeats when we pretend that safety and dignity are luxuries rather than rights. Let the Princess Alice disaster remind us. Water, like history, remembers everything. Please like, follow, and subscribe for more.